This is Jen from Sacred Waters. This is part 2 of the Oshun story. And if you haven't watched part 1, you should definitely do that because it becomes important later. But where we are in the story is I began working at Bloomberg NEF because of a mix-up and was pleased to find out that not only do they have water everywhere in their office, but they do good in the world. So about that time, we were getting ready for the spring and summer, the spring equinox, which is when we change our prayer at Sacred Waters. And I knew from about 6 months before, so during all the turmoil in part 1, that we were going to pray for Oshun in the spring and the summer. And so for 6 months, we make a certain prayer, and the prayer was not asking anything. It's for the fresh water in the world, so that the fresh water be honored, valued appropriately, that people understand its value in a different way, that we don't take it for granted, all of that. So we transitioned into that prayer, and the store was decorated with gold and yellow. We had all of the products related to bees. We had honey, both raw honey and CBD honey, lots of things. All of our workshops are geared towards the theme, and we're praying very deeply for the fresh water in the world. And soon after I started at BNEF, I got the opportunity to submit an idea. They were asking for ideas about maybe what the company could consider to do differently, and you can submit any idea that you want. So I didn't know even about this opportunity, but I was talking one day at work with a few people about how water is undervalued, that we don't understand it well, and that there's a lot of things that could be done about education and research around that and valuing it in a different way, and that I thought if there is a World War III, then it would likely be fought over water. And somebody said, oh, you should submit this idea to this project. So I did, and it progresses through different levels. And at one point, employees get to vote on them. Another point, it gets picked by a committee. And along the way, you add teammates. So when I progressed to the level where I needed to add teammates, I knew that because this idea was born from the water and my relationship with water, that I needed to be very careful about how I do this. And so I chose all women to be on my project team. And we got to go together to London and present the idea to a very senior group of people. And one piece of the story that I wanted to share is a few years ago, a friend of mine at the time had given a gift to Sacred Waters, which is a feather from a red-tailed hawk. And when the gift was given for Sacred Waters, it was explained that that the hawk is very different from other birds. Most other birds, like eagles and other sacred winged animals, scavenge. So they don't hunt their own prey, but the hawk does. And because of that, the hawk has a different kind of focus and attention about keeping the eye on the target and being able to hunt in that way. So it's about focus and determination and a different kind of ability to see. So the day that we had voting, employees got to vote on the ideas. There were a bunch of ideas, I think more than 100. And of course, we had been asking everybody we know to look at our idea, and if they liked it, vote for it. And there were a few close people, like people who sit next to me, that I had said, don't vote for us yet, wait until the last day. and then, cast your votes at the end. So it was the last day, and it looks like we were going to be first place, but it was pretty close along the way, very close actually. And so the last hour, I said, okay, guys, if you haven't submitted your votes yet, please do it now. And there were about 4 people that all submitted their votes at that time. And then we, on our floor in the building, across the floor, so, I don't know, 5 or 6 rows away, somebody sort of made a scream, like an exclamation, like, ah, like this. And everybody looked, and the entire floor, which is maybe 30 or 40, probably more than that, 50 people, ran over to the windows on one side of the building, and straight across from the windows is the roof of another building. So we're at eye level to the roof of another building, and there, sitting on the top of the building, was a red-tailed hawk who had just caught I believe, a pigeon. But it caught a pigeon and was there on the roof with its catch. And I couldn't believe it. It brought me right back to the moment of the message about the focus and the determination to get what you're going after. And I knew in that moment that we were going to be going to present the idea, that this idea about the water was much bigger than me and guided by many more things than just me. And I was in awe. So I took a few pictures of the hawk, and a few weeks later, basically we did progress. Eventually, we got to go to London. And if you don't know about the Bloomberg building in London, it's the world's most sustainable building, and it's beautiful. So we had a 3-day workshop to prepare us to be able to speak for 5 to 10 minutes to very senior people in the company about our idea. And the presentation was on a Friday morning. On Friday afternoon, they arranged for us to have a tour of the building, a special tour. Well, I found out that day, actually, that there is a temple beneath the Bloomberg building. And I wasn't planning to go on the tour, but when I found that out, and that it was part of it to see the temple, I went. So I didn't know much about it. Someone was telling me just that it's an ancient temple, pre-Roman times, and that it's 2 stories below ground. It's an underground temple. So we started the tour just on the ground floor, but above, like on top of the temple, in a room that they built there that's circular. And I already was like, wow, this is incredible, because that's representative of feminine energy, and it's a perfectly circular room. All the walls are curved. There are temples built like this in different places that are for the feminine. And don't forget that the buildings all have fish tanks everywhere, which is a feminine symbol, the water. So also don't forget, we're now at this time still praying at Sacred Waters for Oshun and for the fresh water. So here I am presenting this idea about water in the world to very senior people, and hopefully going to make a difference about that. And so we're in the circular room, and she says this room was commissioned, the art in this room was commissioned to honor the goddess Pomona. And I don't know who the goddess Pomona is, but I said, well, what is she the goddess of? Like, do you know anything about her? And they told us that Pomona is the goddess of love and fertility and abundance, and basically all the same things that Oshun is. It's just a Roman, during the Roman cultures, she had that name. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the same as Oshun. It's the same concept of the fresh water. This is incredible. And then the art on the walls, she was describing that it's an abstract piece commissioned to honor this goddess, and that if you look closely, there's an overlay on top of the piece which looks like city, kind of like buildings. It's abstract, but shapes of buildings, of somewhat imperceptible bugs, and it's bees and other bugs but bees are sacred to Oshun. So I was like, what? There's on top of the temple this commissioned work to honor the same goddess effectively with a different name, and there are bees all over the wall. So I'm so excited to go in the temple, and they said though that the temple was closed and that we would have to come back another time to see it because of every 6 months they changed the artwork in the lobby, and it was being changed and the process wouldn't be finished for like another week. So it was super cool that they also change every 6 months, just like Sacred Waters. But I also was disappointed that I didn't get to go to the temple on that trip. However, was able to go to the temple eventually and see it, and it's amazing. It's amazing that Bloomberg restored it. It's amazing that they offer it for free to the public. And if you have the chance to go, I highly recommend it. When I went there were almost no other people there, and I was able to pray and just say thank you to thank you for the opportunity about presenting about the water. Thank you for the place. Thank you for. I just was in huge amounts of gratitude, and I sang a little song for Oshun. And it was amazing. So I did eventually get to go to the temple, and it doesn't say this in any of the materials, but I believe at the temple, what I got when I was there, what I felt is that they were honoring the water. And there was a water at the time when the temple was built, there was a river at the time the temple was built pre-Roman times that ran right next to it. Right now that river is in a pipe underground. But I believe, my personal belief is that it was located there because of the river and to be next to the river, which is another link to the water and Oshun. So at that time, I didn't know yet. There was no answer about the water project or our idea of what we were able to present it. And it was this beautiful, looks like the end of the story about why I was able to go to Bloomberg. But it's not the end of the story. And there's another part, which is in part 3, which is a different video. So if you want to hear more of the story, keep watching. And I also wanted to say that on the tour, they told us that when the building was finished, it's really incredible. There's so many pieces. There's the materials that were sourced, the way it's sustainable. The walls open and close for cooling and climate control. If you have a chance to go. But they told us that when the building was complete, Mike came to visit and was upset that there wasn't a fish tank, and he said, "Where are the fish tanks?" And because of the way the building was designed, it wasn't able to hold the weight of a large fish tank, and so he supposedly paid quite a lot of money to reinforce an area of the building where a fish tank could be placed. And they have a giant fish tank, 2 actually giant fish tanks in the London building, which were additions at the very end. And I've also visited the building in San Francisco, which has a huge fish tank. So I don't know what the reason that Mike Bloomberg has for putting water and fish tanks into all of his buildings, but for me, water is sacred, as you guys know if you're watching this video, and it spoke to me, and one was a big determining factor in me working there at a very spiritual level, and so far is a beautiful validation of the things that I hope to bring into the world. So I don't know if Mike Bloomberg will ever see this video. It's probably better if he doesn't, but if he does, or anybody who watches this knows why or what his link is to water that way, I would love to know. So let me know if you find out.